Oh, we are now. Yep. Yep. See, you ask and ye shall receive.
I'm not live here yet.
No, it hasn't gotten to your neighborhood.
No.
Oh, the internet's here.
There it is.
Here.
Boom.
Boom. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Status Coup. I am Placone.
I'm Tina-Desiree Berg. Hope you guys were watching.
We nailed that. That was really good.
Well, we just were watching John Farina's live stream in New York City, the Solidarity with Cop City protest that's going on there today. So cutting over to us now. He's going to keep recording that, so we'll upload more clips of that later. They're doing speeches, I know.
And it's solidarity with Cop City not happening. Not solidarity with Cop City.
In case that wasn't clear. When I say Cop City, I mean Cop City not happening always.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. No. I was pretty sure. It's just a slightly odd framing, but I get what they're trying to do, which is stop that ridiculous thing from happening. But
later this hour, we have Kamau Franklin, who is an activist there on the ground. He's been on the show a couple times already. We get an update from him on what's going on during their week of action this week. Over 40 people have now been arrested for domestic terrorism. It's crazy.
Yeah, and there might be a potential another Cop City. We're going to look into that. There's still a lot of ambiguity there, but there might be something going on in my hometown of Pittsburgh. Also got a very brutal update in net neutrality, and we're going to start over in East Palestine, as we have a lot, because we're pretty much it. We're the only outlet left. Is anyone else still there?
More Perfect Union, I think, was there a couple days this week. I think they left, but...
so it's the two of us. It's the more perfect status. When we combine our forces, it's most perfect status. That's like more perfect union meets status coup. And but yeah, almost everybody has left. There's just a few outlets still on this beat. We're one of them. So let's get to it. First of all, no locals were asked to were invited to testify.
Congress.
Yeah, they had the we're going to get to some clips here. Bernie Sanders said something. Ed Markey and Senator Merkley, their names are way too similar. No one's ever done anything about it. Who has not mixed those two up before?
Oregon, Massachusetts.
They're both on the coast. Like, they're messing with us. And they're both a little older. It's like, come on, this is just. But they both had some things to say. No locals. Again, they were not invited to testify, but they're there to deliver their community demands, which is safe homes and independent testing right now. Quite frankly, things they shouldn't have to demand.
Right.
They shouldn't. I mean, it's like, it's so gross where it's like people are asking for things they shouldn't have to ask for. And by the way, all these questions they were asking of the CEO were things that they shouldn't have had to ask for. And you know what I'm going to ask you to do right now? Smash that
like button.
Smash it. Smash it. Smash the like button for freedom. Do it. And by the way, folks, there will be a members call tonight at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. So please do. You can join right now. Go to StatusCoup.com/join. That helps us put boots on the ground. We have been bringing a lot of journalism to you. We got John in New York, Status Lou on the beat in East Palestine. Tina's going to all kinds of places, uncovering crazy stuff. I might be going on the beat in a little bit in Pittsburgh if there's something there. So please, your support means everything. StatusCoup.com/join. Your resources go to journalism. And the members call is tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern. You can join right now. You'll get the link. You know. But shall we go to the Bernie clip?
Let's go to the Bernie clip.
Let's start with Bernie.
It's classic Bernie.
Bernie Sanders.
The entire country, I think, was shocked to learn a number of months ago that your employees, rail workers, who work in a dangerous job in all kinds of weather, had 0 paid sick days. Now, I know that is beginning to change, but I would ask you, given the fact that Norfolk Southern provided $10 billion in stock buybacks recently, can you tell the American people and your employees right now that in order to improve morale in your workforce, that you will guarantee at least 7 paid sick days to the 15,000 workers you employ. I do know you've made some progress. You increased paid sick days for some of your workers. Will you do what most Americans think is pretty obvious, that when you get sick, you get guaranteed paid sick days? Will you make that commitment right now to your entire workforce?
Senator, with our latest agreement with our employees, which included a historic 24% wage increase and access to premium health care benefits, we immediately pivoted to talking to each of our local...
I've been deeply involved. I introduced the amendment on the floor. I know the issue. But what I'm asking you right now, you provided paid sick days to some of your employees. I got it. Thank you. Will you now do it? What we get here in Congress, our employees get sick, they get paid sick days. Will you make that commitment right now to guarantee paid sick days to all of your workers? That's not a radical demand. It really is not. Will you make that commitment, sir?
Senator, I share your focus on our employees. I will commit to continuing to discuss with them important quality of life issues with our local craft colleagues.
In all due respect, you sound like a politician here, Mr. Shaw. It's not paid sick days is not a radical concept in the year 2023. I am not hearing you make that commitment to guarantee that to all of your workers. Clearly, we should have that for every worker in America. I'm not hearing that commitment.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
He's not making a commitment. He's like, kind of skirting the issue. It's ridiculous.
Dude, that was like Bill Clinton level. Did you have sexual relations with that woman? Well, define sex.
Define.
We are committed. Oh my God.
No, we're committed to have a conversation. As if that means anything. We're committed to talking about it. It's ridiculous.
I was waiting for Bernie to ask him again, and he was just gonna be like, "Well, Senator," and that was it.
My favorite was when he said, "You sound like a politician."
Yeah. Well, which is totally true. That guy. I mean, we'll see this. He does this in every clip, by the way, folks.
He does.
Does not get better.
Alan Shaw was not having a good day.
Or Alan Shaw was having a great day because Alan Shaw thinks he's above everything. This is, honestly, this is frustrating.
Well, that's exactly it. Is anything going to come from this? Are they going to actually lay down the hammer on Norfolk Southern? Are they going to lay down the hammer on the railway industry? Are they going to actually do something to help the workers get what they need? That's the question. If they don't come back with any real regulation, this is just political theater.
The worst, the only time Bernie was continually asking questions and it was going that frustrating for me was when he kept asking Joe Biden, did you call for a cut to Social Security?
Yeah.
Now, in that case, at least Joe Biden lied. Joe Biden just straight up lied. That's why Bernie kept asking it. He's like, Joe, there's footage on the internet.
There's footage of you doing it. Yeah,
Joe, exactly. look, I know the last piece of technology you used was an Atari in 1981, but look, there's this thing called the internet. There's videos on it. Joe, there's footage of you. People can look it up. They can go in a search engine. I know you don't know.
All the Zoomers are now madly Googling Atari.
Thing called Google. There's this thing called Google, Joe. They can find the video right now. I'm going to ask you a third time. Did you call for a cut? No, Bernie, I did not. And I don't know what this internet thing is you speak of. Oh, my God. That's the last time. That was frustrating because he lied. In this case, the guy just straight up won't answer. So
he doesn't want to perjure himself.
The answer is no, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. I mean, it's and it gets better. So who's next? Is it out of the Markey?
Is it Merkley or Markey? I don't know. There's a couple of Ed Markey clips that are pretty good. I think it's Merkley.
Merkley's next. All right.
Yeah. Senator Merkley, Oregon.
The Oregon guy.
The Oregon guy.
And they're both kind of good on digital rights, too. So it's
yeah, they are.
They have all these parallels where it's are we sure you're not the same guy?
In 2021, your company did $3.1 billion of stock buybacks, and in 2022, $3.4 billion of stock buybacks. And as of December, had another $7.5 billion available to do additional stock backs under the $10 billion stock back plan. That's quite impressive numbers for any American company. It indicates massive profits. Will you pledge today that you will do no more stock buybacks until a raft of safety measures have been completed to reduce the risk of derailments and crashes in the future?
Senator, I will commit to continuing to invest in safety. We invest over $1 billion a year in safety.
You noted that you have a list of safety things you'd like to implement. Will you commit no more stock buybacks until those safety improvements are completed?
Senator, I will commit to continuing to invest in safety. And you've seen over time the number of derailments, hazardous material releases, and personal injuries has declined. There's always more that we will do, and I am committed to having the best safety culture in the industry.
You're coming here with 3 derailments within 3 months, and the average in the industry is 1 per month for the entire industry. So congratulations on maybe some good luck over a few years. But at this moment, your team is the team that has the most derailments in the last 3 months.
Pointing out that hogwash. Unbelievable. I mean, he's trying to act like he's committed to safety when we've seen the opposite happening, right? So they've, not replacing brakes. They're lobbying their senators to have fewer regulations. They're adding more trains so that the trains are too long, too heavy, more likely to derail just for that reason alone. It's all about making money for Wall Street. That's just not up for debate.
It's so basic. He just won't answer the question because he's not going to do anything they're asking. He's just not.
Unless he's forced to. That's exactly it. Unless Congress comes in and actually does something to do to force these guys to come to the table, they're not going to do it. And we need to have regulation.
What
regulation? Bring back the regulations.
Like just straight up more regulations. That
100%. Why is our Congress so afraid of actually regulating industry? It used to do this, right? The reason they're
gives them money.
I was just going to say that it's because of regulatory capture, right, and the money. So, this idea that and it's also been kind of a creep from right-wing libertarians, calling for deregulation, privatization. Right. We saw this creeping in under Bill Clinton, obviously, in his neoliberal policies, but it hasn't abated. Yeah, it hasn't abated since then.
Like the stuff with the airline, that predates Reagan even. I mean, that started in '78 where they were just giving them everything they wanted. I mean,
it's become a religion to Congress to just not regulate any industry, and it needs to end. It's enough already. The Department of Justice needs to step in and start, doing something about antitrust laws again. A whole lot of things.
That's what I was kind of hinting at. Like, I was like, could they break some of these companies up too? I mean, they have to have the will to do that, which is
they have to have the will, the political will. The question is does our government have the political will to do what is necessary? And they should have that will because they have the political backing of the constituency, right? Meaning not the corporate donors, meaning the people that they're actually supposed to represent, us.
Yeah, but they kind of don't care about that too much now, do
they? Don't. No, but that's what needs to change, right?
So let's go to Markey, the Massachusetts guy. Massachusetts Markey, that's what his friends
Massachusetts in the house.
Again, asking for something, a basic yes or no thing, a reasonable demand. And this is the answer he gets from a guy who just clearly, the theme here, folks, this guy thinks he's above it all. Because this is how the United States works. CEOs
he does because he's been allowed to do it for so long, right? He's probably smugly thinking in his head right now, yell at me all you want, but are you going to actually come for me? Are you going to actually put regulations in? Or are we just engaging in some bullshit political theater and I'll see you at the bar at 6?
No kidding, right? And here's the thing to keep in mind, folks, because this is something we easily forget. And when it comes to the world of Wall Street, CEOs like this dude, they're the middle of the road in comparison. There are so many people above this guy power-wise, and this is the attitude that this dude has. Yeah. He's in the middle. He's in the freaking middle.
Yeah.
Now, there's some CEOs that are definitely not in the middle because they're CEOs and, like a Jeff Bezos or something like that. Right. But in this case, this dude's in the middle. There's people way above this guy, and this is how he's acting. Yeah. So let's go to Massachusetts Markey. Let's see what he has to say.
Will you commit to compensating affected homeowners for their diminished property values?
Senator, I'm committing to do what's right.
Well, what's right is a family that had a home worth $100,000 that is now worth $50,000 will probably never be able to sell that home for $100,000 again. Will you compensate that family for that loss?
Senator, I'm committed to do what's right.
That is the
Long-term.
right thing to do. These are the people who are innocent victims, Mr. Shaw. These people were just there at home, and all of a sudden, their small businesses, their homes are forever going to have been diminished in value. Norfolk Southern owes these people.
That is amazing. Will you do this? I'm
Senator,
gonna do what's right.
I'm
That's
committed
what's
to doing
right.
what's right.
That's the right thing.
I guess he thinks if he keeps saying that without actually saying I'm going to do what you're asking me to do, that he's,
This is like a Monty Python sketch.
it is 100% a Monty
If I
Python.
tell you the thing that's right, and you say you're going to do the thing that's right, well, are you just going to do the thing? I'll do what's right. That is the right thing.
That is the right.
That's the right thing. This is nuts. This
It is nuts.
Nuts. I don't know how nobody broke something like a pen or something, like just a stress ball. Maybe it's all theater. I mean,
It is all theater.
This guy, like, he's just above it all in his mind. Like, it's like, I mean,
And
you know that's the case in the United States, but when you see it firsthand, like it still feels like the slap in the face that it is. That these people just don't care at all.
They don't care. No, Ron, they don't care at all. I want to put up the More Perfect Union had a graph showing the amount of derailments that are the lowest. So basically, Alan Shaw made this lie that they've been their lowest. The derailments are the lowest that they've been in 10 years. We all heard him say it in that testimony a few minutes ago, right?
Yeah.
Here is a graph that More Perfect Union tweeted out that actually repudiates that. So you see right here, Norfolk Southern's the top, industry-wide. Look at how much more severe it is.
Yeah, those bigger numbers are in later years, so he either really
there's
doesn't
no way.
understand how time works,
Or
might.
he's doing some, statistical maneuvering where he's changing whatever dates. Like, let's just cut it off at,
I think he's straight up lying. I don't think he gives a shit about anything. I think that.
Oh,
dude,
I agree with you there, but I'm
cares about
saying he
nothing.
must.
He's just lying. He doesn't care. He doesn't think anyone will check him because honestly, no one in the corporate media would.
Right.
Like whatever press was allowed in that room, which I'd imagine is just like the cable news outlets. They're not going to freaking check that. Outlets like More Perfect Union got to do it. Places like Status Coup do it. I mean, oh man, wow! It is just listen to this guy. Is there more? Do we? Oh,
Yes, we have
another
a second Ed Markey.
Markey's back. Massachusetts Markey, man.
Markey was on fire today. He was going.
I am committed to making Norfolk Southern safety culture the best in the industry.
Well, you're not having a good month. You're not having a good month. And it seems like every week there's another accident that Norfolk Southern is a part of in our country. So you may think that you've put in enough, okay? But the facts are saying just the opposite in terms of what is happening. And what I'm hearing from you is just this great confidence that you have in your system. But I'll tell you this, Mr. Shaw. Overconfidence breeds complacency, and complacency breeds disaster. And that disaster has hit East Palestine.
He's kind of getting out what you were saying about how the hubris that he's engaging
Yeah,
in, right?
dude. I mean, that guy, just for the entire thing, just did nothing. He did not care at all. And by the way, it's interesting.
There was another train.
Right.
Do you know there was another train derailment while this hearing was happening? By the way, kid you not?
Yep. In Alabama, while this was going on, another train derailment happened in Alabama. Why don't we jump to that real quick, and then we'll go to Jordan and Lou for a second. But yeah,
Okay.
So ironically enough, while Ed Markey was saying this stuff, breaking, a Norfolk Southern train has derailed right in Alabama. Officials are in Calhoun County, Alabama. Officials are reporting approximately 30 Norfolk Southern cars, there it is, have derailed
is,
off its
yeah.
tracks this morning. First officials are saying, or excuse me, fire officials saying there is no danger to the public and no hazardous materials that have been released. This is the company's third such incident since early February. The cause of the accident is still under investigation. So there it is. That was literally happening as he's testifying, as he's lying about how good their trains are doing.
And how he's committed to safety.
You're having a bad month. Another train is derailing. This is a Simpsons cartoon. I mean, this is nuts. It literally derailed. And hopefully that's, this just happened. Hopefully that's accurate, that there were no hazardous materials. We'll see if that changes. As of right now, that's the case.
But there could have been, point being, there could have been,
And by the way, even if there are, they're probably not going to do the right thing, because guess what? They still are not declaring a state of emergency in Ohio. And why aren't they doing that? Well, because that way Norfolk Southern doesn't have to take responsibility for anything. So let's go to Jordan and Status Lou. They had a response to this.
The federal government actually, by law, I think it's a bullshit law that can be changed, denies places like East Palestine a federal disaster declaration, because a federal disaster declaration is only for natural disasters like a hurricane or tornado. Obama denied Flint, for example, a federal disaster declaration. Mm-hmm. I think that's nonsense. I don't care if it's natural or not. A federal disaster declaration, the federal government takes over. So you would have had FEMA full blast in Flint and in East Palestine. You would have had the Army Corps of Engineers in there digging up the soil. The federal government and all its resources would be in there. But because the federal government, by law, they say, cannot issue a disaster declaration, a state of emergency is one step under that, which provides more resources to the state, in this case, Ohio. And if Ohio Governor DeWine issued a state of emergency, that would give the EPA the lead role in Ohio. He has not declared a state of emergency. So who has the lead role in Ohio? Say it with me. The corporate criminals, Norfolk Southern. The EPA right now has basically, they call it primacy is the legal definition. The EPA does not have primacy in Ohio. Norfolk Southern does. Can you imagine that? This is like the arsonist who burns down your house is now in control of rebuilding.
Yeah, it's like what Stella said when we interviewed Stella, the East Palestine resident. It's like the person with the money wins, and in this case, Norfolk Southern, not East Palestine. Norfolk Southern has all the freaking money, and so everything is going in their favor. We're not going to declare a state of emergency so that they don't have to foot any bills. We're not going to declare a state of emergency so that they can just do what they want. Meanwhile, trains are continuing to derail. I mean, there's just no top-bottom leadership in this entire country. I mean, East Palestine is just the latest example of just a complete federal failure at an abysmal level. This is what a failed state looks like, folks. This is what a failed state and an empire looks like, because we have a solid war machine, and that's what our economy is based off of, while things continue to decline and decline and decline at home. We've seen this before.
It doesn't have to be this way. It's really ridiculous, honestly.
Oh, we're the richest country in the history of the world, pretty much. It doesn't have to be this way. I mean, this is nuts. Before we get to a couple other quick stories, and then we're going to go to Cop City, we want to welcome new Status Coup members, Douglas and David, which, by the way, if you sign up now, you can you'll get stuff in time for the call tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Oh, speaking of, Colin, can you let folks know if they are members on YouTube, not on our Status Coup website, how do they get the link for the member call tonight? We have a couple people asking about that.
Yeah, so if you are a YouTube member, just come back to YouTube and you'll see a members only post on YouTube that only YouTube members can see, and that'll have a link to it'll either be the Zoom itself or like a sort of host web page that'll have the email info of the email I'll be sending out to everyone who's not YouTube. So if you're a member on our website, old or new, or on Patreon, just check your email, check your spam. The email will be going out about 6 p.m. Eastern, maybe a couple minutes after. So you have to join as a member before then in order to get the invite and stuff. Unless you're on YouTube, then you can just click the link anytime.
Okay,
YouTube.
thanks.
And
Now
also,
we
we
know.
got a $7 donation from Mark, who donated on StatusCoup.com. Thank you so much for
Thank
that,
you.
Mark. Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
that.
And of course, welcome Douglas and David. And folks, feel free to leave a super chat as well. We will get to all of those towards the end here. Let's go. You want to hop to Sarah Huckabee and then Gigi Sohn?
Yeah, let's do that, and then we'll do Cop City. By the way, do folks know that Norfolk Southern, speaking of, is based in Atlanta, and they are a donor to the police foundation there that's funding Cop City?
Isn't it
Everything
great?
is like
Great. How they're
all connected.
all connected. So Sarah Huckabee Sanders, let's go to that headline.
Let's go to that.
Outlawing drag shows.
She's outlawing drag shows and eliminating child labor laws at the same time.
What a great man! What a great one.
She's had a hell of a week there in Arkansas.
She just, yeah. I mean, it's. And by the way, this is like one of, what are we up to now? About 130 anti-trans bills that are just out there. And in Tennessee, they just they're trying to pass something else that would pretty much challenge marriage equality.
And in fact, my guest today on Right Wing Insanity Report that follows the stream is with Tennessee Holler about this very thing.
Yeah,
with
I mean,
Justin, who's the editor in chief.
It basically says, well, yeah, I mean, you're going to get to it. So Arkansas is rolling back child labor protections.
Yeah, because of course they are. I know. I just
Arkansas is rolling back some child labor protections after Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, which I don't know if you saw that plaque the other week where governor is misspelled. It was perfect. This week signed a new law making it easier for children under 16 to get hired. The new law is part of a push by some states to loosen child labor rules at a time where the job market remains tight with the lowest jobless rate since 1969. That's because of how they measure unemployment. They don't underemployed. In Minnesota, a bill would allow...
and this will absolutely drive down wages even further, right? That's the whole point of this, isn't it? The whole point is chasing the lowest wage that they can. And corporations know if they have more younger workers coming into the market, they will clearly, obviously, work for less money. Then that'll drive those wages down even further. It's pretty gross.
It's beyond gross because, it's going to drive wages down. And, you know, I mean, most people on minimum wage are adults. A lot of them have family. Like they use that whole it's just for high schoolers looking for
not anymore.
It's not.
We should have thought about that before we destroyed our union jobs, destroyed our manufacturing jobs. This is really what jobs have become available to folks that lost really good paying union jobs in a lot of the Rust Belt. That's just not up for debate at this point. So the fact that they still want to treat a minimum wage working job as being an entry level something not needing skill is just a bullshit move. People should be able to make a living wage, period. If it's just that simple. I don't care.
That's the point of the minimum.
Skill shouldn't even be part of the conversation. Why is that being part of the conversation? Why do we have to bring that in? I don't think we should.
No, minimum wage is a living wage. That's why we have the rule in the first place. And guess what? You know, I mean, only in the United States would you have a system where people think that working people, and just all people, quite frankly, aren't entitled to healthcare, aren't entitled to a living wage for their labor, aren't entitled to reasonable benefits that give them a quality of life, aren't entitled to an education, but an employer is entitled to an employee without giving them any of those things.
Yep.
Only in the United States, there's a sense of entitlement that the employer is entitled to an employee. Oh, I can't pay the living wage. Well, then you don't get a freaking employee. That's how it works. You don't pay a living wage. You don't get an employee. It's that simple. But they're trying to get around this now by literally lowering laws for labor. So it's
at the same time, and it's not just Arkansas. This article talks about in Minnesota, a bill would allow 16 and 17-year-olds to get work in the construction industry. In Iowa, they're looking at a bill that would consider legislation that would permit a 14 or 15-year-old to work in freezers and meat coolers, which is currently prohibited. So this is something that's happening in multiple states right now. This is like a trending thing, so to speak.
And this is also on the heels of various labor laws being violated
with
across
child
the
labor,
country.
which we've talked about.
We've talked about that on this show. There was an incident in Pittsburgh. There was an incident in I think Tennessee had something. I mean,
yes. The rollback comes less than a month after the Department of Labor fined a company for employing children as young as 13, to clean razor-sharp saws with caustic chemicals, including at 2 Arkansas meatpacking plants.
Yes. Yeah. So Sanders is helping those people out. Sarah Huckabee is helping them out. She's like, well, let's get rid of these pesky laws. It is unbelievable. Meanwhile, she's outlawing drag shows. And again, one of 130.
So her quote though, let's talk about this quote before we go to the drag shows, because she's arguing that outlawing drag shows, although what was signed into law is had to come back a little bit so it could pass constitutional muster. Having said that, though, Sanders' quote about the labor removing the child labor protections is this. Sanders believes, quote unquote, protecting kids is most important, but doing so with arbitrary burdens on parents to get permission from the government for their child to get a job is burdensome and obsolete.
Okay. It's
so basically a child that's 14 can go clean really dangerous saws with caustic chemicals without having to ask their parents' permission, but they cannot go see RuPaul in costume.
Yeah. Well, and even beyond that, it's so interesting that the same political ilk that is all about like, well, we just want parents to know which counselors their kids are going to, that are so like worried about that. They think, but if the kid wants to go operate a saw, the parent has no say in this.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
it's
no, it doesn't make any sense.
Ridiculous. And so let's go to the
bill so we can see what's in that. So this is the Arkansas Advocate article. A bill originally that would have restricted drag performances can be held in Arkansas, but now does not mention the word drag at all, and it became law on Friday. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders signed 15 bills on Friday, including Senate Bill 43, which was heavily amended earlier this month in order to survive potential legal challenges. The new law defines an adult-oriented performance as one that is intended to appeal to the prurient interest, meaning overtly sexual.
That can be interpreted in so many ways.
It's so vague, and features complete or partial nudity and the exposure of real or fake breasts. Prosthetic breasts.
You bailed on prosthetic. I don't blame you. That's a tough one. I would have stumbled over it too.
I couldn't get it out. I'm like,
I was cheering for you. I was like, you got this.
It's been a long day. I was up at 5 a.m. this morning.
I feel
Originally, the bill defined drag as exhibiting a gender identity that is different from the performer's gender assigned at birth, using clothing, makeup, or other accessories that are traditionally worn by members of and are meant to exaggerate the gender identity of the performer's opposite sex. Oh, the horror. The absolute fucking horror. I mean... And singing and dancing and lip syncing and performing in other ways in front of an audience. Anyway, you get the point that we're trying to make here.
So this is similar to what they did in Tennessee too, where it's like they didn't actually use. I'm pretty sure the bill in Tennessee also does not have the word drag, but they have this like vague language of like adult performances that would provoke this or that. So it could be interpreted to be basically anything, and it's like and in support of certain gender things, whatever. I mean, it could be interpreted as any drag performer. It could be interpreted as a person who's just like singing a song, but they have a shirt on that's in favor of the LGBTQIA community or something like that. Like it could be interpreted as anything, and it's written that way on purpose.
My freedom. These are, it kills me. These guys are constantly going on about how everybody's trying to take their rights away and how everybody's trying to ban and censor them, but really, in reality, it's exactly what they are doing to other people. It's like unbelievable to me. How does she read this and think that she is not encroaching on other people's civil liberties? If you don't want to go to a drag show, don't go to one.
Yeah. Don't go to one. If you're so offended by someone in drag reading a story to children, don't take your child there.
Exactly.
You know, if I ever had a child...
But she thinks it's burdensome for parents to have to get permission to get their child to work with caustic chemicals and saws. Wrap your brain around that. That is burdensome, but this wouldn't be? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
It's just like...
Help me make it sense. Help me make it make sense. It's just nuts.
What's the very definition of total selective outrage, I mean, it's just like... It's absolutely remarkable, and it's just so if I ever had a kid, I would love to take them to a drag storybook reading. You know what? You know
Yeah.
where I wouldn't take my kid? I wouldn't take my kid to church. You know, and that's my choice. But I'm not going to go out and be like, well, we got to ban
We
churches
got to ban
now.
churches now. Yeah, no, because
You
that
know,
would
like-
be unconstitutional.
Right,
Exactly. How do
exactly.
they-
So
I
it's
mean,
like, you don't want to take your kid to an event like that? Don't
then
take your
don't
kid
take
there.
them.
You know, but don't tell other people that they can't.
Right. While
mean-
claiming you're about American civil liberty and freedom, because they're
No
not. None of
kidding,
these folks
right?
are. They are the worst, folks for wanting to like take away rights from other people. Unless, of course, it's for corporate America and it's like, ooh, 14-year-olds, saws and caustic chemicals. It's just amazing.
So let's go to Gigi Stone for a bit. This one
Yeah.
really freaking hurts, folks. This one really freaking hurts. You guys know me. The net neutrality beat is a very important beat to me. We covered Gigi Sohn's third hearing live on Status Coup. Gigi Sohn, of course, for anyone who needs a refresher, was Biden's appointee to the FCC, which would have given us a pro net neutrality FCC. After a 2-year right-wing smear campaign and Joe Manchin bailing, even though he originally said he wasn't going to, and with the absence of other Democratic senators, she likely would not have gotten through, so she withdrew her nomination. This is a huge loss. There's no getting around it. So the FCC remains in a 2-2 gridlock. Sohn supporters slammed Democrats over failure to confirm Biden's nominee. You know, when she was getting smeared left and right, no one came to her defense. And now, like, some Democrats are bailing. Nothing's being done about it. Manchin, of course, was the one to put the nail in the coffin, as he so often does. And now we have an FCC that's in gridlock. What they're going to try to do, they're going to try to wait out the clock until, like you get another Republican in the White House to try to prevent Biden from ever giving us a pro net neutrality FCC, which, by the way, just for the record, he doesn't really want to do anyway. He was forced to promise he was going to do that in the Bernie Biden task force. So this is a huge loss, folks. And for those of you, and I know a lot of you watching now, you've probably been following this story with me since the beginning. All I can say, this freaking hurts. Right now, we're all just a little shell-shocked, but we're going to figure out what to do next. And we're not going to stop. We're going to try to get a pro-net neutrality FCC commissioner appointed in that spot. So we get a pro-net neutrality FCC as we were promised. This is definitely a huge blow. But, once we figure out what steps are going to be next, I, of course, will let you guys know. In the meantime, go to don'tbantiktok.com. Please do sign that petition, because if that passes, that's going to infringe on a bunch of our amendments to get information from foreign places. This goes far beyond whether you use TikTok or not, because they're going to mess with the Berman Amendment. So go there. And folks, I'll tell you where you can see me. We'll do some super chats. Then we'll go to Cop City. First of all, if you haven't yet, please do watch my pilot Loner. We're going to drop the link in the chat. I released it last week. Please do check it out. It's episode 1. I hope to make the full series really soon. And you can catch me on the road April 14th, Los Angeles, California. May 12th, Los Angeles, California, doing my Edinburgh hour. June 16th, Madison. June 17th, Minneapolis. June 29th, Chicago. Use the promo code Lucy at checkout for early bird specials on those Midwest shows. That's for a limited time only, but you can get money off tickets for a limited time for Madison, Minneapolis, and Chicago. Detroit, June 23rd. Hold the date. Tickets aren't available yet, but June 23rd, I will be in Detroit and Edinburgh, Scotland. I'm going to be at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival August 16th through 27th. My shows are at 4 p.m. at the Little Cellar at the venue 32 Below. So Edinburgh, can't wait to see you. 4 p.m. daily, August 16th through 27th. RonPlacone.com for all tickets and information, and check out those tour day. Check out that pilot Loner, and let's go to the chat for a bit, shall we? And then we'll go to Top City. So thank you, Mark. Welcome new members Douglas and David, and we also have Tony Dallas. What's up? Is there any way to subpoena the shareholders? Right?
I wish.
Yeah, I wish. Absolutely. Tony D, not to be confused with Tony Dallas. Should we get Will Smith to slap Alan Shaw as a comedian? I can't laugh at that. I can't laugh at that as a comedian. No, I can't. Diantha S, what's up? Thank you for your membership. Welcome. good to have a new member here. Hope to see you on the call. And Chris Garrett, the one and only Chris Garrett. What's up? How are you, my friend? Congressional inquiry coverage with Jordan and Lou. Stop Cop City protest coverage by John Farina. Thursday evening news with Tina and Ron, and a members call. It's a heck of a day.
It's been nonstop today.
It has been quite a day. And guys, we couldn't do it without you. So please, you can still leave some super chats. We will get to them before we close out here. Please do go to statuscoup.com/join. If you are able, become a member. You get the link for the members call tonight. It's happening at 7 p.m. Eastern, and you're helping to fund independent journalism.
Yep.
You know, we've been on the beat in East Palestine. Well, Status Lou's been on the beat in East Palestine. We go and we bring you these stories. Then we compile them in the studio. We bring you firsthand footage. And we couldn't do it without you. Journalism takes resources. Without resources, we can't do it. There's travel involved. And traveling is very expensive these days. So please, if you are able, statuscoup.com/join. Thank you, Tony Dallas. Thank you, Tony D. Thank you, Chris, for your super chat contributions. And shout out to new members, Diantha. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I may not be. Apologies if I'm not. And also new members, Douglas and David. Pretty sure I'm pronouncing those ones right. And thank you, of course, for the donation, Mark. And so let's go to Cop City.
Okay.
And I guess we'll start with let's start with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, let's start
go to your interview.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of weirdness right now in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where there's the possibility that there might be a bigger and even more expensive Cop City going on there. So let's start in November. So this is from the Tribune Review in November. Let's pull up that headline first. So
yeah, this was an interesting article because their point of reference for the piece is they're interviewing one of the individuals that's being charged with domestic terrorism from Atlanta. The individual's originally from Pittsburgh.
The other one.
So,
this is the first one.
Yeah.
So
it's an interesting read, actually.
In this one, yeah, no, it's a cool piece. But so it all starts here. Pittsburgh is going to use $400K designated for a public safety training facility on road work. So it started here. They were going to have this facility dedicated to traffic training and police training. So Pittsburgh
and fire. It was supposed to be everything. Yeah.
So it was going to be this inclusive thing or extensive thing, rather. And here was $400,000 going towards it. Now, the actual bill is way more than that. It's in the millions. So it's like, where the hell are they going to get this? So it started there. That was the initial grumbling about this from the Pittsburgh Tribune Review, which, just as a side note to keep in mind, the Pittsburgh Tribune Review is Fox News. That's Fox News in Pittsburgh, or the equivalent of it. It's not directly affiliated with Fox, but it's like the big right-wing newspaper. So let's go to an update from the Pittsburgh City paper. Now, this is more
That's
recent.
the one I thought we were talking about originally. Yeah, I don't...
So this is from March of this year. So as construction begins on Atlanta's Cop City, Pittsburghers are concerned about an allegedly similar local project. So this starts out interviewing some people from Pittsburgh who were at Cop City, and they were arrested for it.
Yeah, she was arrested for. She's one of the original 19 that is facing domestic terrorism charges. Arrested in the forest. So that's their point of reference for talking about the possibility of something that they've been looking to build there. Mm-hmm. So it's actually interesting. That's the original article that I thought you were talking about. So
let's scroll down, Colin, to where they get in the Pittsburgh part of it to kind of show an update on, is this still this facility that they spoke about in November, or is it seemingly a little ambiguous what is going on here? So scroll down past the one picture. The Save Our Forest picture or whatever it was. There we go. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So in 2020, the city of Pittsburgh acquired the former Veterans Hospital in Lincoln, Leamington from the federal government at no cost in order to build a regional training facility for police and emergency responders. Now, that what was referenced in the article from November. A proposal to develop the 168 parcel in the works since at least 2018, blah, blah, blah. Now, they're saying this will cost more than $120 million. Former Pittsburgh Mayor Bill Peduto initially proposed relocating police and emergency services headquarters, the police training. So they were going to have all this stuff under the umbrella of this facility. But now the scope of the project has since narrowed to focus on police training facilities, which is sounding more like Cop City. And that, despite the reduction in scope, the estimated cost of this project still remains over
120 million,
million, which 120 million is a lot more than $400,000. It's also a lot more than the 1 million or so that's just allocated for city projects. So where's the rest of all these millions coming from?
Well, that's a good question, because he's saying that he's committed to he doesn't see a role of opportunity for private funding. He does say that. So where are they going to get $120 million from the government budget? I mean, the government doesn't have that.
Yeah. I mean, we know about 400K. We know about one here. We know that apparently the scope of what this project actually is potentially changing, but we're not sure yet. So right now, there's a lot of ambiguities and, dare I say, red flags here, where it's like, okay, what's going on? But I can tell you that here at Status Coup, we're going to stay on top of that. So is there going to be a second Cop City in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania? Potentially, yeah. I think there's still a lot we don't know yet. But potentially, yeah, there's some causes for concern. And we're going to see how all this unfolds. In particular, where the hell are they getting about $118 million? And what do they need it for? If
bonds, I guess.
If they narrowed the scope of this project, if it's not going to be about traffic training and fire training and all the other stuff, and it's just for cops now, why do they still need this much money? Don't you think it'd be cheaper? A lot of mysteries here, folks. A lot of mystery. And we got a few more super chats. Despos Fleisch, what's up? Is there already a net neutrality plan B? Well, the plan right now is to demand a pro net neutrality appointee. And as far as like the overarching net neutrality plan B, that's already been happening. And, to insert a little bit of brightness here, has been going well. The big plan B was to start passing net neutrality at the state level, and we've done that. We have a good net neutrality law here in California, and I believe there's about 6 other states that have net neutrality laws at the state level. Now, even if your state doesn't have it, this still helps you. You know why? Because all these big cable companies can't unroll anti-net neutrality packages when they can't unroll them everywhere. It's kind of kneecapping.
It locks them in. Yeah, kneecaps.
Locks them in.
They're not going to. They're forced to do it for California, so they can't undo it for Arkansas, so to speak.
Exactly. It kind of screws them, which is good. We're holding the front line, but the fact that we have not been able to get an appointment. I mean, and again, I've said this before. Usually, it takes a couple weeks to confirm an FCC appointee. It took all of Trump's a couple weeks. It took Obama's a couple weeks. This is historic. It's taken 2 years and counting, to the point where the person had to rescind they had to take back their nomination. This is historic. This is just historic corruption, and it's just gross to see. I mean, it's so criminal. And so that's where we're at. And we're trying to get to, we're just still trying to get a pro net neutrality appointee, really. Manticore Tia, hope I'm pronouncing that right. Anytime I can get the truth out here is a good day. Thank you so much. Y'all are awesome. I came here because Kim Brown, that's awesome.
Oh, right on.
Awesome. Kim's great.
Awesome.
And I see why she is here. Oh, that's so cool. And you shout out Philly. Hell yeah, Philly. I love Philly. I know there's supposed to be a rivalry between Pittsburgh and Philly, but I love both cities. Yeah, I mean, I don't get it. They're both.
Is that kind of like LA and San Francisco?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like it's like they're both. I mean, and sports rivals and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
always.
I mean, admittedly, I'm not a Flyers fan. I'm a Pens guy, but I love Philly, the city. I mean, it's a wonderful place, and they're very different
Yeah, I
cities.
like Philadelphia. I've been there a few times.
Philadelphia's cool, and
Yeah.
it's very different. Like Pittsburgh's very different. Like they're very
Yeah.
to compare them is kind of like, well, they're very
They are
different.
very different.
Like one's more Midwestern, one's more
Yeah.
coastal, because one is more located in the Midwest, and
Right.
like one is closer to the coast. Funny how that works. Isn't that crazy? So let's get to your interview. Staying on
Okay.
city. So Pittsburgh's still
Yeah.
ambiguous. Where we're a lot further with, of course, is Atlanta.
Yeah, so they're having their week of action right now in Atlanta. Some folks have seen some of the video from this. There was a music festival that happened a couple nights ago. Multiple arrests have been made. Again, we're seeing a lot of domestic terrorism charges. But that's not all that's going on. There's a million things going on this week. So I spoke with Kamau Franklin this morning, who is a Cop City activist. We've had him on the show before. I interviewed him when I was there in Atlanta. He's great. He's very informative. He's very dedicated to the cause. So interviewed him. We're going to play that interview next. And then following that, for Right Wing Insanity Report, I'm speaking with Justin. He is the editor-in-chief of Tennessee Holler, about what he's going to call creeping theocracy in the state of Tennessee, including the bill you talked about earlier, and a few other things. It's not just the drag shows. It's some other things.
Yeah, the thing going after marriage equality. I mean, I'm sure he unpacks it a lot more, but it basically says like, well, if it's against someone's religion, they don't have to do anything. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So like they're going after it, and this is
we had
the
a few
first.
technical issues with the internet, but I think it's a really good interview. I think it's for me, I want to start spending more time talking about some of the things happening in states that are not as big as necessarily as, Georgia, New York, California, because what's happening in some of these states is really going to start affecting everybody in the country, not just the folks that are there living through it, and it's been very tough for them. So, and it doesn't get enough attention, right? A lot of the mainstream media, they don't want to, kind of mess with that. They're like, Arkansas, Tennessee, not our problem, right? But I do think as part of the United States, it is our problem, and these stories do need to be told. So we're trying to focus some attention on some of these areas a little bit more. I mean, I think East Palestine is another example of that. Look how everybody's bailed. And Ohio's a, fairly populous state. My family, little known fact that people don't know about me, when my family moved here from Sweden, they moved to Ohio, believe it or not.
What part?
So, do you really want to know?
Yeah, why not? I grew up around there, so yeah.
Youngstown, believe it or not.
Oh, that's like big mafia area.
Yeah, my dad went to Kent State, so.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, interesting. All right, cool. Yeah, I've been
So
to
I have
Youngstown.
roots there.
I've performed there before.
Yeah.
Been through there. Yeah. I
But
went to a really
that whole
fun wedding
area has
there.
been very devastated by the job losses of losing manufacturing jobs. You've got the university
Dude.
there and very little else.
Yeah,
So
and they
this is-
used to make a bunch of stuff there. I mean, that was like the big, like they had more steel production there than almost anywhere.
Yeah.
Springsteen wrote a song about it. It's called
Yeah.
Youngstown.
Yeah, and now you end up with these, what ends up being minimum paid work jobs, which is why it's so imperative that these jobs are paid a living wage. When those are your options for work, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
I mean, so people that don't seem to understand the predicament of some of these folks, it's very troublesome. But part of the problem is that media doesn't shed light on all of these areas, because it just, they're so focused on, corporate media is so focused on the bigger picture because they've been consolidated. We've lost a lot of our local media, right? There used to be a local paper in every town. There used to be local journalists employed by every major paper in smaller towns, right? They would have bureaus and whatnot. All of that has dried up, which is why a lot of these stories are missing from the narrative. And I think it's very problematic.
So just one last quick
Anyway,
shout out.
I digress.
Well, I just want to make sure we got to
digress.
get to the interview, and
Yeah,
I just
sorry.
want to make sure we
Totally
do
my
shout out
fault.
all the members. David, Douglas, Janice, Barbara, Edward, welcome. Thank you so much. Welcome aboard. So good to have you.
Yes, thank
you again to Tony Dallas, Tony D, Deantha S, Chris Garrett, Despos Fleisch, and Monta Cortea. Thank you guys so much. and of course to Mark. Thank you all so much for your support, for your membership. And we have a Cop City interview followed by an interview about Tennessee.
Hi, I'm Tina-Desiree Berg reporting for Status Coup News. And today we're speaking with Kamau Franklin again, who's an organizer in Atlanta working on the Stop Cop City movement. Welcome, Kamau. I'm happy to have you back on the show. Interested in getting some updates in the wake of last week, where you guys had basically a week of organizing rallies. Ended up in a festival where multiple people were arrested and charged again as domestic terrorists. So just wanted to get some updates from you on what's going on there and next steps and whatnot. So welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Always enjoy talking to you. And so the week of action is still going on as we speak. Tonight is a big night where we're having a rally and demonstration at 6 p.m. at the King Center, which is downtown Atlanta. Yeah. This is connected to a national day of action around police violence and police terror in our communities. And so we have about 22 to 25 cities that have registered at the very least to do everything from direct action to civil disobedience to banner drops to marches, rallies, teach-ins. Excuse me. So we're pretty excited about that. We're pretty excited about the type of traction that this is getting. And so, yes, we've had different type of actions this whole week, and there will be more to continue. There's going to be a teach-in on Saturday that's connecting Cop City to the Palestinian issue because of the connections with the Israeli police to the Georgia police.
Right.
And if we go back to the festival that you brought up at the beginning of the conversation, that was actually on day 2 of our organizing and actions. And so that festival, there was an action that was a mile away from the festival. The police decided to use that as an excuse and or rationale to break up the actual music festival. And so they went there and arrested approximately 35 people, 23 additional charges of domestic terrorism, which brings the total number to now 42 people who've been charged with domestic terrorism. Since the beginning of our protests, we've had over 70 to 75 arrests by the police for different charges. And again, this last layer of charges now brings the majority of them now to be domestic terrorism charges. So we, again, think this is another attempt to criminalize the movement, to scare people off from joining. It is not working. People are still out there organizing. They're actually now following protesters around in downtown Atlanta, threatening them as they hand out flyers, making folks disperse because they're nervous about it. But they think that's going to slow us down or stop this movement, and we will not stop this movement.
No, if anything, they're going to create more anger, not only in their constituency there in Atlanta, but also across the country. It's obvious that most folks there don't want Cop City to be built, and the politicians are continuing to ignore that message. Obviously, the police are taking their cue from that. I want to go back to the night of the music festival. You mentioned that there were 2 separate locations. My understanding is there was a musical festival going on in Weelaunee Park. Bands were playing. There were families there. Children were present. And the area in which some equipment was set on fire was a completely different area. Yet the cops came into the music festival and were arresting people there without cause. Is that correct?
That is correct. The other area where they have already cordoned off in terms of their plans to build Cop City was a mile away from the actual music festival. And so they decided to travel from that area to the music festival. And as you said, they basically stopped the festival from happening. They threatened people. They actually threatened to shoot people. People with pepper spray, throw to the ground. Again, indiscriminate arrests. Folks who were not involved in the civil disobedience were arrested. In fact, they arrested a National Lawyers Guild attorney who was standing and watching things. And so this continues again, and this is the same pattern we've seen in prior arrests. People who just happen to be, or people who are engaged in civil disobedience, but have not engaged in any other action but civil disobedience. And when we say to civil disobedience, by that we mean people who have done nothing else but sit in trees, and people who have camped out in the forest have been arrested and charged with domestic terrorism. As I've said before, it would be one thing if charges were sort of commensurate with the actions that people took. We would still fight those charges. We would still be opposed to those charges, but at least that would be understandable. What's happening here is something on a whole new level in terms of terrorizing and trying to make a movement scared and trying to squash dissent or quash dissent. That's really what their goal is with the way in which these charges are being thrown out there.
I agree. They are basically arresting people that have done nothing more than exercise First Amendment rights. They are trying to kill political dissent. That is the goal of this. I think they're well aware that none of these individuals have engaged in any acts of domestic terrorism. I also want to mention for folks that are unaware, this is a state law. This is a Georgia state law. This is not federal offenses. These are state law, GBI. So the state domestic terrorism law, this is the first time it's been used since it was created back in 2017 in the wake of Dylann Roof. And, it's obvious that it's being politicized in a way that's completely offensive. If you're against, if you want to stop the government from squashing First Amendment rights, then this should make you angry. And that means everybody, not just people on the left. I want to read, Kamau, I want to read Southern Poverty Law Center. You mentioned a legal observer was one of those arrested. Not only were they with the NLG or the National Lawyers Guild, they are an employee of the Southern Poverty Law Center. So they put out a statement. Law enforcement detained at least 35 demonstrators in Atlanta on Sunday, including an SPLC employee who was arrested while acting and identifying as a legal observer on behalf of NLG. This is part of a months-long escalation of policing tactics against protesters and observers who oppose the destruction of the Weelaunee Forest to build a police training facility. The SPLC will continue to urge de-escalation of violence and police use of force against Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities, working in partnership to dismantle white supremacy, strengthen intersectional movements, and advance the human rights of all people. Stop Cop City. So, they've now escalated to this point where they've arrested a Southern Poverty Law Center employee. That's pretty intense. So I would imagine that the SPLC getting involved will be beneficial to the movement because that's some serious legal backing. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, no, we want them to be involved. We have a broad array of legal organizations, legal defense organizations, as well as, of course, individual criminal defense attorneys who have stepped forward and decided to help support the movement and the activists and organizers who they also feel are being overcharged in an attempt to kill dissent, in an attempt to stop dissent. And so we welcome folks coming in. We've gotten outreach from several different law firms who specialize in either trying to do movement work or anti-police brutality work or anti-repression work. And those forces have been useful and helpful and have helped push the way forward in terms of coming up with legal strategies and support. So we do understand as organizers and activists, we are not alone in this. That there is, again, a larger movement that as much as the city and the state try to criminalize and separate organizers and activists, we have seen and they have seen that this is a large movement, a diverse movement, a movement of many different ideological and philosophical views, and one that won't stop until we stop Cop City.
Indeed. In fact, I had spoken with the family of one of those that are facing domestic terrorism charges. He is a native of Atlanta, lives there in Atlanta. The police have been trying to put out this discourse that it's all outside agitators that are causing the problems. And in his particular case, what kind of blew me away is I watched the bail hearing, and the DA was trying to make the case that because he was the one that was from Atlanta that they arrested, that he was the ringleader. And this is not based on any evidence whatsoever. This particular individual this is the protest that I had filmed. So he had been at the front of this protest carrying a banner the entire night. He had absolutely not participated in any of the window breaking. But yet this kid has an ankle bracelet on and he's facing domestic terrorism charges. It's completely insane. What do you make of that?
Even amongst the last 23 who just recently were arrested and charged with domestic terrorism, they all were denied bail. And so you are correct. There's not even an attempt to follow the law to see whether or not people have community ties, to look at their individual cases and what they're being, what is the evidence, the early evidence to even suggest
there's
that they
none.
were involved in any. No, there's nothing whatsoever. This is just basically the district attorneys, the prosecutors are saying something, and the judge is going along with it. What I should say is that the police are telling the prosecutors, and the prosecutors are saying it to the judge, and the judges are going along with it. This has nothing to do with a fair trial, a fair hearing, or making sure that people are reasonably assessed in terms of even flight risk for bail. This really has to do with repressing organizers
I agree.
and making people scared. Yeah,
I agree. It's about chilling the First Amendment. It's crazy to me. I doubt that any of these cases will make it through a probable cause hearing, quite frankly. But in the meantime, they got what they wanted. In their mind, they think if we squash the political dissent, we tamp down and arrest these guys, there will be less protesters out there because they'll be afraid of getting also charged as domestic terrorists. But I don't see that happening. I think it's having the opposite effect, quite frankly. People are angry that they are having their constitutional rights infringed upon. Also, I want to mention, in the meantime, because of the way the district attorney has gone about this, the way the Atlanta police have gone about this, there are a lot of right-wing extremist groups on Telegram that are sharing these individuals' photos and names and addresses and encouraging their followers to go harass them, which I think is incredibly dangerous. Now you have folks that actually truly are, in some respects, domestic terrorists, neo-Nazi groups, whatnot, targeting these guys because they get very angry about anything that they perceive as being Antifa. I have concern about that. Do you have concern? Has there been any discussion with other activists on this?
No, we definitely are taking notice of the amount of fascist ire we are drawing as a movement. And I completely agree with you. What happens in these time periods is with policing authorities or policing agencies, they don't focus in on right-wing terror. They don't focus in on the actions of fascists. They focus in on left and progressive forces. And so even when we look at the history of the civil rights movement, when the FBI went to the South, they didn't focus in on breaking up the Klan. It was organizations, civil rights organizations, nonviolent institutions, people like the Freedom Riders, SNCC, Dr. King, SCL, NAACP. Those were the organizations and different community organizers who were infiltrated and killed and their organizations destroyed. And they only did a little bit to the Klan, if anything, because a lot of the local law enforcement were actually involved in the Klan and part of it. And we see those
they were. At that time, it was really common. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and we see those same aspects today, and it's not only just the Klan, but you have things like the Oath Keepers or you have other right-wing organizations like the Proud Boys, and you see all of these law enforcement links to these organizations and groups, but yet they're not the ones being investigated by the state, city, and federal authorities. It is organizers who are protesting against police violence who get all the attention.
Indeed. I do want to turn our attention to politicians now, because I think part of the problem as to how we got to this place is that the politicians weren't listening to their constituents. You've had a very unpopular policy position that has been supported now through 2 city councils. You have a mayor that was part of the original city council that put forth the plans for Cop City. He's now the mayor, and obviously he's not backing down on trying to push this through. I did want to say I saw Representative, I believe her name is pronounced Rua Roman. She's from the Duluth area. She put out a tweet that basically said, "I'm incredibly concerned about the reports coming out of Weehilani Park. I saw pictures of kids from earlier, yet there's no indication those kids made it out safely." She's referring to the police using tear gas and whatnot measures inside the music festival that night. There were kids present. Additionally, it appears legal observers were detained. For those in and around the area, please share any updates. So I'm starting to see somewhat of some folks stepping out and saying this is not right, this has gone too far. How do you see it internally there in Atlanta? Are you seeing any movement on the political side that we should know about?
I mean, I think you brought up one of the strongest cases. There may be a couple of other state representatives who have said some things, but in reality, we've had a sort of a pitiful response from the political class, particularly those who bill themselves as progressives or left-leaning. These folks have not stepped out, even if they're going to be in a minority. There are a block of people, particularly who ran for the city council, who have not stepped out in front of this issue and said, we are opposed to Cop City. And that's what we need in terms of either political cover or, again, to show the breadth. It does us no good as organizers for folks to say they have our back behind the scenes. Yeah. But in public, they say nothing, and or they seem to be siding up to the mayor and to the police. So we need elected officials who are going to step out in front, who are going to say something. It's not that we expect a whole lot, but at the very least, if you're calling yourself progressive, you have to understand that the domestic terrorism charges are ridiculous on their face. You have to understand that calling for an investigation that's an independent investigation into the killing of Tortuguita has to happen.
Yeah.
And at the very least, you have to put forth that this project should be slowed down, if not stopped, because it didn't go through a fair process, a just process. The community was not involved in any decision making. And so therefore, we expect at the very least for so-called progressive leadership who are elected officials to do something of that nature.
Indeed. You know, it's interesting to me, Kamal, because it seems like some of the more moderate folks in Atlanta, they might be okay and agree to something that was a much smaller scale. So if they scaled this thing back, 50 to 75% and had some other ideas, they could probably get more political buy-in. But the fact that they keep doubling down on this monstrosity of a political training center that is might as well be a military base is just, it's mind-numbing to me that, and these are Democrats. It's not just Republicans. It's not just Brian Kemp, right? Some folks want to make it about the Republicans, but I'd say most of these city council folks are Democrats. So
no, all of them are Democrats.
All
so
of
let's
them.
be clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, there's one independent, and that's Mary Norwood, who is part of Buckhead.
Okay.
But just to be very, very clear on this has been led by and pushed through by so-called liberal, progressive Democrats. Folks who say they stand up for certain communities, that they respect people's rights, that they're fighting to bring more resources. Those are the folks who decided that when the city had $30 million, it should go to build Cop City. They've now decided to work hand in hand with the right-wing Republican white supremacist governor of Georgia in order to fight back against protesters and organizers. And again, as we said earlier, chill dissent.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It's just mind-numbing to me, quite frankly. The only thing that would make sense in this arena is that there is some sort of quid pro quo that's happened between the corporations funding the police foundation and these politicians, because they are absolutely ignoring their constituency. When I was there the last time, I couldn't find anybody that was like, yeah, we want this thing built. I mean, I even talked to grandmas that were like, no, that's a bad idea. So it's just, it's an egregious example of politics gone wrong. All right, so what are your next movements? So we're still in your week of activism. You said you have this evening, there's a protest. I know we are going to be covering a Cop City protest in New York later this afternoon. We've got some coming up in LA. So there is solidarity across the country. What other next steps are going to be happening there in Atlanta that folks should know about?
I think immediately after the week of action, we're going to start stepping up our own campaign to stop the DNC from coming to Atlanta. Okay. Atlanta is one of 3 cities in which the DNC said it is looking for. We want to make sure that the DNC understands that if they come to Atlanta, they're going to be facing protest morning, noon, and night. Also, Atlanta is attempting to get FIFA the World Cup here, and we also need FIFA to understand that if they come here, a place that is obviously abusing people's human rights, ability to protest and First Amendment rights, that they too will be protested. So we think that there has to be a political/economic price paid by these elected officials if they want to go forth and put together a violent police militarized center. Instead of listening to people, as you said, who have been opposed to it, then we are going to do what we can to fight back and make sure that these other institutions that they want to bring here don't come here, or know that there's consequences if they do.
Have there been any voices calling for the recall of any of these city council members?
Well, we had a petition out against the mayor in particular, telling the mayor to resign, where we had over 100 organizations that signed on to that petition. And so we have been focusing more on base building and organizing in the community and putting the word out. We have a little hope. We do want elected officials to come out and say something, but it's hard to expect the same elected officials who have time and time and again laid down on this to all of a sudden get a backbone and stand up and say, hey, we're opposed to Cop City. Again, even if they say it in private, they have not made it known publicly, and especially not often enough so that folks understand that there should not be, that there's not a solid block of folks who are supporting this in terms of the elected officials, but there's clearly a class of them who are fighting against it and who are pushing back.
So why is that? Why is there this disconnect where they might not be on board with what's happening, but they're remaining silent? What are they afraid of?
Oh, I think they're currying favor with the mayor. To be quite frank, I think they're currying favor with the mayor.
Makes sense.
I think they want to stay in in good standing with the police chief. I think they don't want to seem too politicized or out there on this kind of issue. And so I think they very clearly are attempting to either situate themselves for future runs for other offices, or they like getting the attention of the mayor, getting invited to certain events and activities, and they don't want to mess that up, including their relationships with some of the corporations that are also putting money towards this.
Painful. It's everything that's wrong with American politics, in my opinion. I also want to ask one last thing about the police chief. He tends to use this, very dramatic language. For example, the night of the Atlanta protests where one of the cop cars was lit on fire, if you looked at the press releases and his video of press conference and any questions he answered, he constantly used the word explosives, knowing full well that they were just fireworks. If he wanted to be specific about what had happened, he would have said they had thrown fireworks. Instead, he's saying they had explosives on them. And that creates a level of fear, right? Because an explosive could be something as like a pipe bomb, which is much more dangerous and serious. And I think that these are words that he's using by choice. He wants to scare people. What are your feelings on that?
No, I think that's most definitely true. I think that fits into, again, this narrative of criminalizing protesters, of using terms that do not apply, like calling things explosives when they are fireworks, like calling people domestic terrorists who are doing civil disobedience and acts of sabotage. And again, if there are laws on the books about doing certain things and they want to charge people with those things, again, we would fight them tooth and nail, but at least that would make more sense in terms of what you're charging it.
Right.
Here, this is just creating a narrative around criminalizing, and again, the theme of today is stopping dissent, and that's more what they're interested in. They don't want people protesting, they don't want people organizing, and that's what they're trying to shut down. They don't care what lies they have to use to get that done.
I agree. And in fact, this guy would charge the Boston Tea Party founding fathers with domestic terrorism for dumping tea into the Bay. This country has a very rich history of civil disobedience. It's sort of in the country's DNA, so to speak. So it's disturbing to see that. And I would like to say that anybody that is listening to this that has witnessed these events should be very angry and upset, because this is a very dangerous rhetoric that is being engaged in Atlanta, calling people that are doing nothing more than exercising their First Amendment constitutional rights domestic terrorists is an absolute bridge too far. This should concern everybody. It is truly the Orwellian world in which so many people complain about for lesser things. So I'd like to see that more people start to pay attention to this situation, because I doubt this will be the end of it. Part of one of the emails that came out from that FOIA dump with the police chief and the police foundation and some others was that they were looking at, on one of the bank loans, they were saying that 45% of the folks that would be training at Cop City would be coming from other jurisdictions. So we're talking out of state. It could well be that the LAPD, the New York Police Department, end up having contracts with Atlanta to send, their police there to train in these military procedures. So it does affect.
That's exactly what we expect. Yeah.
Yeah.
We expect that exactly. Yeah. We obviously think that this training center and others like it is the beginning of a nationalized police tactics and strategy around stopping movements in the future, particularly movements against police violence, as well as the continuation of the over-policing, in particular of the Black community. So we very well, as you're laying out, we think that's what it is. Yeah,
I agree. It's the next wave of militarizing our police force. The people that are supposed to protect and serve are now treating people, and have been for a long time, as enemy combatants. And, if anything, we should be teaching de-escalation, not doing this. I agree with you. So any parting words for us?
Only that, across the country, we want folks to continue to get involved, be involved. There's levels of activities that people can be involved in. If they go to communitymovementbuilders.org, we have a Stop Cop City page. People can do some simple things like calling elected officials, the mayor, the city council, signing petitions, calling corporations to get them to divest, telling developers that they should not be trying to build this. From that to doing actions wherever you are, banner drops, direct action, civil disobedience, marches, demonstrations. There's a whole world of activity. We want people to get back out in the streets around this issue of police violence, because we know that that's the only way we'll be able to attack this issue and solve it.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us today, Kamal. I appreciate it. And if people want to follow you on Twitter, I know it's your name, is Kamal Franklin. Is there any other locations they should follow you at?
Well, I mean, they should follow the organization Community Movement Builders,
Okay.
which is also on Twitter, Defend the Forest ATL, to find out more information about the work of Stop Cop City also.
Okay, great. Thanks. On the Right Wing Insanity Report, we're taking a trip to Tennessee where I'm speaking with Justin, who is the editor of the Tennessee Holler. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me.
I am absolutely excited to have you on because you guys have been doing some tremendous work there in Tennessee, covering some of the things that are going through the state legislature there. So I wanted to take a close look at some of the reporting you folks have been doing. I want to start with the right-wing extremists that are pretty much blurring the line between the separation of church and state. You have an Office of Faith-Based Initiatives, and I know there's been pushback from the Democrats in the state body as well, but I find this kind of be crazy to me because First Amendment kind of prevents the, having a religion taking, the lead pole position, right? The idea is you have tolerance. Everybody has a right to feel or believe what they want to believe. But the minute you preface one religion over another, that disappears just by virtue of that. So what exactly is this Office of Faith-Based Initiatives?
Well, I think you got to start by understanding that Tennessee is a theocracy, and Governor Lee is a man who puts Christianity and faith at the center of everything he does, and it's kind of the driving force behind this Tennessee Republican supermajority. So there's an Office of Faith-Based Initiatives that was passed into law. When it first started, the promise was that it wasn't going to take state funding. And so everybody said, all right, well, there's a faith-based initiative office, no state funding, whatever. But that was just to get the foot in the door. And now Jason Zachary is carrying a bill to allow it to be state funded, to allow state employees to profit off of it, and another step towards blurring the line between church and state. Now, if you ask Republicans here in Tennessee if there's a line between church and state, they'll tell you no. So if you don't believe me that Tennessee is a theocracy, just ask the Tennessee supermajority.
Right. In fact, let's play. There's a video that you guys had put together on exactly this. Colin, let's go ahead and play that to give folks an idea of what we're talking about.
This simply allows the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives to be included in the budget if we choose to appropriate money to do so.
When this was brought, if I remember correctly, said there would be no state money going into this. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. The Office of Faith-Based Initiatives has spent so much of their time raising funds that's really limited the effectiveness of the office.
And when we say faith-based, we're talking about Hindu, Muslim, any type of faith-based. Is that correct?
Any faith-based or community organization that needs help.
There's a lot of things that are admirable about this. Our forefathers set up the separation of church and state. To me, this just blurs the line more than I can go. Now we're turning into an agency of the state.
Our founders did not have a foundation of separation of church and state. As we all know, that was initiated by Thomas Jefferson in his writings to the Danbury Baptist in 1803 or 1802. Separation of church and state is not included in the Constitution. That is a premise, again, that was established by Thomas Jefferson in his personal writings that is not based in the foundation of the Constitution. Those words are not included in the Constitution anywhere.
Those in favor say aye. Opposed? Bill moves on to full.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the committee.
Okay, I have a couple of issues here. He's not wrong on the letters that he's referencing with Thomas Jefferson. That absolutely did happen. But I would argue that the First Amendment absolutely does have, as a suppressed premise, a separation of church and state. Because again, once you preface one religion over another, then there's no longer the free choice that we are guaranteed by the Constitution. How are they finding their way around that?
It wasn't quite the same under Bill Haslam. The Governor Lee has really entrenched this theocratic agenda. His main priority when he came into office was private school vouchers, and what that really is about expanding public education funds into private education, mainly religious institutions. There's also the charter schools. He wanted to flood Tennessee with charter schools through Hillsdale College, which is known to be, a Christian college in Michigan. So, and his ties to Betsy DeVos, and Betsy DeVos's agenda with the national education was to the Koch brothers, right? So, it's really important to understand the through line through all of this is theocratic, and not to say that we fault anybody for their beliefs. It's just not what's supposed to be at the center of our government. And you go down a very dangerous road when that's how you govern. And we're seeing that here in Tennessee. We are the absolute spearhead of that right here in Tennessee.
Yeah, they're not being shy about that. They absolutely are embracing Christian nationalism but again, like, just so folks know, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or
Right.
prohibiting the free exercise thereof. To me, that is like 100% a clear thing that basically says you cannot establish religion. And the minute you say Christianity is what this country was established on, you are in violation of the First Amendment. So it's wild. How do you think this began? Okay, so the roots of the theocracy in Tennessee didn't start in 2020. I think it started much earlier. What point would you say was the beginning of that?
I think very good. Yeah, I mean, we have no reason to, there's no resistance here. The Democrats are in a super minority. They can make noise, but they can't stop anything. Business interests don't seem to care. They're not here making noise. They're not threatening them. And I don't even know if they did stand up that these guys would back down. This is what they came here to do. They're doing it, and they keep getting reelected. So what's the backstop? The court system, when the courts don't go their way, they replace judges. They create new courts, chancery courts, to take these things to. So, democracy is dying a quick death here in Tennessee. And, it's really a one-party system where the people at the top will stop at nothing to enact their theocratic agenda in a very fascist way here. It wasn't quite the same under Bill Haslam. The Governor Lee has really entrenched this theocratic agenda. His main priority when he came into office was private school vouchers. And what that really is about expanding public education funds into private education, mainly religious institutions. There's also the charter schools. He wanted to flood Tennessee with charter schools through Hillsdale College, which is known to be, a Christian college in Michigan. Yep. So, and his ties to Betsy DeVos, and Betsy DeVos's agenda with the national education was
also the Koch brothers.
The Koch brothers, right. So, it's really important to understand the through line through all of this is theocratic. And, not to say that we fault anybody for their beliefs. It's just not what's supposed to be at the center of our government. Right. And you go down a very dangerous road when that's how you govern. And we're seeing that here in Tennessee. We are the absolute spearhead of that right here in Tennessee.
Yeah, no, it is a dangerous road because it is an infringement on other people's civil liberties. Also, dangerously, they want to complain about Muslim Sharia law, but they're fine if they put in the same type of Christian laws, which can also be very detrimental to people that are maybe in marginalized communities. So, yeah, I agree with you. I want to ask you, HB 327, which is the bill that's in question. I want to put this tweet up. HB 327 removes the requirement nonprofit partners use their own money. So this is what you were referencing when you're saying the government can now give them money. What is the chances that this bill actually passes?
I think very good.
Really?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I we have no reason to. There's no resistance here. The Democrats are in a super minority. They can make noise, but they can't stop anything. Business interests don't seem to care. They're not here making noise. They're not threatening them. And I don't even know if they did stand up that these guys would back down. This is what they came here to do. They're doing it, and they keep getting reelected. So what's the backstop? The court system, when the courts don't go their way, they replace judges. They create new courts, chancery courts, to take these things to. So, democracy is dying a quick death here in Tennessee. And, it's really a one-party system where the people at the top will stop at nothing to enact their theocratic agenda in a very fascist way here.
Where is the ACLU in all of this? I'm surprised that they haven't tried to stop some of these First Amendment entrenchments. Or where are they? Do you know?
The ACLU's here. The ACLU has sued them a few times and won a few times. But, as you know, they have a pretty big handle on the courts. And, a lot of the judges are theirs. So, it's hard to fight all of these battles at once. And I think they know that. So that's why they're doing all of this at the same time. The ACLU, there was pushback with a voter suppression law where they were criminalizing voter registration, and that got pushed back. There was a big battle about that. It's just hard to fight all of these battles. The ACLU tries, but they can't be everywhere at once. We've got the drag show felony bill. We've got them criminalizing trans youth health care. They're trying to blur the line between church and state. There's a million different things going on. There's not enough lawyers.
There's not enough lawyers. This is kind of scary stuff. What happens in Tennessee could very well start happening in other states as well, I believe.
Well, I think that's the point that I'd love to get across here is, it's easy to write off Tennessee as kind of gone to a supermajority, but what they accomplish here is coming your way next. Right. So I hope people will get involved here in Tennessee and, steer some resources towards the people that are fighting that fight. There's a lot of important organizations here that are standing up to this stuff. And yeah, what happens in Tennessee is coming your way next. There's no question about it. This is their model for the rest of the country.
I think you're right. So Christian nationalism has been increasing across the board. And we also see outside groups like the Proud Boys getting involved with the same issues, like drag shows you mentioned. Pardon me, I have a frog in my throat. The drag shows that you mentioned, that's becoming a thing. So Christian nationalism in general, it's very detrimental to American freedom, civil liberties, yet it's the Republican Party that's embracing them. This is the party that's basically saying, don't tread on me. We're all for American freedom and civil liberties. But at the same time, they're embracing these types of draconian Christian nationalist sort of laws. Like, how are they getting by with that dissonance?
Well, there's nothing funnier to me than Republicans saying that they're the small government pro-freedom party. I mean, the GOP is the government overreach party. We say that over and over again. What could be more overreaching than telling people how they can dance, what they can wear, outlawing marijuana, banning certain types of health care? This is the overreach party. They are big government. And it flies in the face of everything conservatives have ever said that they stand for. They're only for local control when it suits them. They're only for quote unquote freedom when it suits them. It's the height of hypocrisy. And the only reaction that's appropriate when Republicans are saying they're a party of limited government is to laugh in their faces because it's absurd.
It is absurd. Let's talk about abortion for a minute. So we've now lost Roe v. Wade. Yeah, so Tennessee has some draconian abortion bills that they're trying to get put in place in the state, and I'm sure that's also driven by religious values.
100% completely driven by religious values, and it's not that they're trying to get them put in place. They are put in place. Tennessee has the strictest abortion ban in the entire country. We have no exceptions in our law for rape, incest, or even to save the life of the mother. What's in the law is an affirmative defense, which means doctors would be guilty until proven innocent. It is not written into the law as an exception to save the life of a mother. And so what that means is that doctors are literally risking their livelihoods by performing an abortion even to save a woman's life. So the pushback has been pretty fierce on that. The problem is most of the state doesn't know that that even happened. So we're seeing some quote unquote fixes coming through in this session that we're currently in. The problem is some of the fixes make it even worse. One of the Republican fixes, quote unquote fixes, is essentially to allow for exceptions in the cases of rape and life of the mother. But if you are found to have lied, quote unquote, lied about a rape to get an abortion, you face a mandatory 3 years in prison. So you're now risking 3 years in prison by saying you were raped to get an abortion. That's
even
just going to put a chill on women. Aren't going to report. So it's that quote unquote fix is going to make it so that women don't report their rape. So it's actually making it worse, which is hard to believe that was even possible.
Yeah, because very few rapes are actually prosecuted because it is hard to make the barriers in court. Like right now, we still live in a system where women are put on trial. They are the victims, yet they're put on trial if they bring rape charges. So that is a very dangerous precedent. I agree.
Right. So women are essentially second-class citizens in Tennessee. And, the question I would have for the world is at what point does Tennessee fall off of your list of places to come as far as artists go, as far as events go? How far is this going to go before Tennessee starts to actually feel some consequences?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very real thing. I mean, Nashville is obviously the music capital of the country, so there could be some retribution from that if you have a lot of musicians that are like, we don't want to go to Tennessee at this point until they change their ways. We'll see if that happens. But in the meantime, my understanding is they're also looking to make it criminal for a woman to leave the state and get an abortion in another state.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're going to come up with all sorts of ways to impose their theocratic agenda on people. You know, there's yet another trans bill coming, a third one. Yes, they're going to try to criminalize women leaving the state. You know, whatever they can do to infringe on the freedoms that they don't appreciate, they will do until they are stopped. And, you know, it's really only the beginning.
It's really only the beginning. Let's talk about some of the anti-trans bills, because this has become a real hot point for right-wing extremism. We've seen neo-Nazis, we've seen Proud Boys, we've seen other extremist groups participate in these, quote-unquote protests against drag shows. Some of them have become very violent. It's kind of crazy to me because most of these drag shows are basically just, kind of dress-up costume comedy hour. It's not supposed to be taken as what they're calling it, like pedophilia. It's ridiculous. I want to bring up this great video you guys put together that Matt Walsh, I guess, was testifying because the GOP brought him there. But the Tennessee Democrats did a really good job grilling him. Let's go ahead and play that video.
Can you give us a summary of your educational background or your healthcare education?
I didn't go to college, but I did go to school long enough to learn how to read so I can read the data for myself, and that's exactly what I've done.
And for what purpose do you conduct your research and use this brain of yours?
I use it for the purpose of trying to protect children from being castrated and mutilated.
You don't use it to get clicks?
Well, are you using it right now to try to get clicks with this interaction?
If you're going to come before a committee and make mischaracterizations and misrepresentations, it's fair game for us to ask you your educational background.
You seem to have started this, so you have no medical background, correct?
No.
You're trying to address good public policy, correct?
Yes.
I just have to question, some of your public policy. Singapore is able to have nice things in part because they execute drug dealers by hanging and arrest even petty vandals and thieves and beat them with a cane until they bleed. We don't have nice things here because we aren't willing to do what is required to maintain them. I kind of have to question your public policy beliefs. And you also stated there'd been no studies. Well, I'm sitting here holding a study from the American Academy of Pediatrics, suicidal disparities between transgender and cisgender adults and children. Before you state things, you may need to know all the facts.
On your blog, at about 16, you're an adult who's mature and can make decisions. You're that at 16. I don't care what anybody says, even going so far as to say when you're 16, you should be married and pregnant. 16 is an adult in your view. Why does this bill have minor defined as 18?
I was a radio host 13, 14 years ago in my early 20s. It's also not an accurate reflection of what I actually said. I was talking about the fact that people tended to marry young historically, and that's all that was about. How does that relate to this? To all of a sudden act like this phenomenon of girls getting pregnant at a young age that we consider young, 16 or 17, to act like it's a new thing is ridiculous. It's always been that way. Girls between the ages of like 17 and 24 is when they're technically most fertile. Recently, in the last 30 years or so, we decided that's way too young to start a family. So what I'm saying is that the problem is not per se teenage pregnancy, it's unwed pregnancy. That's the problem in society.
I mean, where do we begin with Matt Walsh? This guy literally was advocating that 16-year-old women should be forced into marriages, and it's perfectly fine for older men to be having sex with them. Yet he turns around and wants to make this trans bill the opposite of that, right? So now 16 isn't old enough to be an age of consent. 18 is. So, I mean, that's hypocritical to begin with. But I also find some of the medical things that he's been saying, which we don't necessarily see in this video, are completely inaccurate in regards to, transgendered teenagers. And I think the point that the Democrats were trying to make here is that you're not a medical doctor, you don't have a medical license, you're coming from a place that's really driven by religious viewpoints, because Matt Walsh is a very religious guy. So I thought they did a good job taking him down on that. What are all your thoughts on Matt Walsh?
Yeah, well, it's important to keep in mind that he is kind of the reason that this bill is happening. He caused this firestorm this summer about Vandy having a trans healthcare program, told a lot of lies about the amount of surgeries that were going on, the genital surgeries that were not happening, and then held a big rally actually about a few hundred yards behind me in Legislative Plaza with Marsha Blackburn, Senator Jack Johnson, they called it the quote unquote gender mutilation rally, and stirred up a lot of anti-trans sentiment. So the response from the legislature was to push all of these anti-trans bills, and it was great to see the Democrats stand up to him in this committee. I don't think he expected that. I didn't even expect it, frankly, but they made some great points. Caleb Hemmer made a good point about the hypocrisy about women getting pregnant at that age. Bo Mitchell and John Ray Clemens got into him about his lack of a medical degree and, really embarrassed him on that front. And, I guess what I would say is you're either pushing back against this stuff or you're normalizing it. And those are your only two options. And the Democrats stood up that day and pushed back against it. More people need to do that. He has no qualifications. The healthcare system, medical, doctors, organizations all support this treatment.
Right.
This is going to hurt a lot of people, the bans that they're pushing. And so they need to be pushed back against, and the Democrats deserve a lot of credit.
Indeed. So Vanderbilt University is at the center of this. Why is it that Vanderbilt's been made like ground zero for this? Is it just because that they're working on certain medical procedures there and he's exaggerating them? Have they spoken out against this bill? The doctors there, like what else is going on with that?
So Vandy says 0 quote unquote genital below the belt surgeries have happened there. They have performed something like 5 or so mastectomies a year on teens between the ages of 16 and 18 with parental consent. Democrats were willing to just say, let's make it about the surgeries and not the hormone therapy that has been saving trans children's lives. Republicans weren't having that. The answer to why Tennessee is the same as the rest of the conversation we've been having. Tennessee has sort of become ground zero for these Christian nationalist theocratic agendas. Daily Wire moved here. They are finding a home here because they are so in control of our capital, which is behind me, and there's so little pushback. So hate has a home in Tennessee, sadly, and this is just another example of that.
It is, and it's an example of extremism that has, like, they need to put everybody in a box. Like, you're either, black or you're white. These are the boxes. There's nothing in between. When in reality, there's lots of variance that occurs in between. There are kids that are born with both sex organs. Which box are you going to put them into? Are you going to say that they're not allowed to have surgery once they decide, which way they want to go? I mean, this just seems so detrimental, and they just want to ignore these, like, what they're going to call outlier occurrences, but they're probably more common than a lot of people realize.
Right. Well, these guys aren't doctors, and they have no medical background. They are trying to legislate away things that make them uncomfortable. That's the common thread between all of this stuff.
That's right.
And Bo Mitchell brought up, I don't know if it was in that clip, but Bo Mitchell brought up, are we outlawing elective surgeries for teens? Are we outlawing breast augmentation? Are we outlawing circumcision? No, we're outlawing trans care because that's what makes these guys uncomfortable. And this is the opposite of scientific. This is the opposite of freedom. This is some guys with too much power that are pandering to an extremist base, while there are so many other issues in Tennessee. I mean, that's the thing that I think we need to touch on also, is these are all distractions from the real issues in Tennessee. We're at the bottom in poverty, bottom in violent crime, bottom in infant maternal mortality, bottom in per pupil education spending. But they don't want to fix all of that because their donors want to keep their money. So instead, they want us focusing on attacking trans kids and drag shows. It's embarrassing and transparent. And until Tennessee voters wake up, they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, indeed. In fact, let's talk about one of the drag bills. There was actually another clip that you folks had that was a business owner that has a brewery down there that was hosting drag shows at the brewery, and he's now being affected by this business-wise. Let's go ahead and play that testimony.
I'm co-owner of 4 businesses in Nashville that are welcoming to everyone but cater predominantly to the LGBTQ plus community. My businesses alone have contributed more than $13 million to the state in form of sales and liquor taxes since we opened. Our shows are fun, lively, campy, theatrical, clever, dramatic, and joyous, but never of a prurient nature, and our performers are certainly not adult cabaret performers. We know this because we have a Tennessee liquor license and are bound by Tennessee liquor laws. Another business of ours offers a downtown bus tour hosted by drag performers, and it's frustrating to us that a fully costumed drag queen seen through a bus window lip-syncing Tina Turner might be charged under this bill, especially since not one of our performers on this bus has ever shown more skin than a Titans cheerleader on a Sunday afternoon. And who else might be included? It's been noted. Is it the group of birthday girls in Memphis that decides to dress like Elvis for the night and dance on the street? Or megastar Harry Styles as he performs in Knoxville in a dress? Are our theaters and TPAC, when they want to perform Hairspray, Chicago, or Mrs. Doubtfire included, can they be arrested and charged? And what about Halloween? Can my daughter walk down the public street as Batman? Just a few days ago, Governor Lee asked for a return to civility, and I applaud that sentiment. I believe in being civil and welcoming to all Tennesseans. But legislation like this isn't about civility or even protecting our children. It's about curtailing business and the free expression of our citizens with a giant can of worms regarding interpretation and enforcement. And I ask you to oppose this bill.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summation of where you have vague language that allows to just drag in all kinds of things that shouldn't be dragged in. So what exactly are the main concerns with this particular bill?
Yeah, well, first of all, his testimony was great, and a lot of people have stepped up and given some great impassioned pleas in a lot of committees just in the 2 weeks that we've been here now. But yeah, this bill is extremely vague. Like he said, you know, you can have a Tina Turner drag performer on a party bus in Nashville get arrested. Meanwhile, Titans cheerleaders wearing the same thing in front of children won't. So it's very vague. And that's really the purpose with so much of this legislation is the subjectivity and the vagueness puts a chill on behavior. You know, people are just going to be afraid that they might get arrested, so they won't do this stuff. And also it lets it be subject to interpretation throughout our state. You know, think about law enforcement in rural parts of Tennessee. Law enforcement, you know, gets to basically decide what does and does count as quote unquote prurient, which is the word that Jack Johnson keeps using and that's in the bill. Yeah. So, you know, it's very subjective. It's obviously targeting, you know, they're trying to act like it's not targeting drag performers. Meanwhile, the headlines when Jack Johnson filed this bill were that it's targeting drag performers. So Jack is just not an honest guy, sadly. And, you know, he is behind so much of this hateful legislation. And the other thing that I think is important to point out, even though it makes the governor uncomfortable, is, you know, he has a sister who's married to a woman, and he is still overseeing all of these ugly bills, this slate of hate. It's really sad, you know, and I can't imagine what the dynamic is between him and his sister. And, you know, it would be great if she would speak up. I understand why she doesn't. But for him to be overseeing the worst slate of hate in the entire country while having a immediate family member married to a woman, it's really an ugly thing, and people need to understand how dark this man's heart really is.
Indeed. I mean, so prurient, that's kind of a crazy word to be using, but I think it surmises it perfectly. And I think the point is that some of these cheerleaders probably engage in performances that are far more sexualized than anything you're going to see at a drag show, brunch show. I mean, really, to me, when I've been to these things, it's a costume, it's funny. They put on a performance like any other performance that's in costume. I don't see how you should take that as being sexual. I think
and we already have obscenity laws on the books. So if there are drag performers out there showing their junk to kids, they'll go to jail. Like that's already on the books. No, this is about making it so that people who dress in a way that Jack Johnson and Representative Chris Todd, let's not leave him out, feel uncomfortable, get arrested. And, you know, it's, again, the opposite of freedom. It's completely subjective. Drag is an art form. It's about having fun. And, you know, we're just criminalizing everything that makes Jack Johnson, Chris Todd, William Lamberth uncomfortable. Pretty soon all we're going to have left are churches and men's warehouses.
Yeah. Men's warehouses. Okay, I'm sorry, that really made me laugh. You're not wrong. You know, it's interesting, too, because drag shows have been part of our culture for decades, and it's odd that all of a sudden it's a thing to go after them. It's
centuries.
Nothing new. Centuries, right? And here's the other thing. I have also seen floating around the internet, and I'm sure you've seen them too, Justin, but there's been some deep fake videos where people have said, look what these drag show guys are doing with these children, and they're not real. They are deep fake videos that have been put together to try to sell a certain narrative.
Well, not only that, yes, I completely agree. Some of them aren't even drag shows. They're just like performances in, you know, South America. But there was one actually here in Chattanooga where it was a drag brunch. There were kids there, and a kid walked up to a performer in a Little Mermaid costume and stroked the mermaid's crotch. Well, it wasn't a drag performer. It was an actress. So it had nothing to do with drag, and yet right-wing activists and provocateurs took that clip, circulated it, and pretty soon we had an anti-drag bill. So the fact that they are working so hard to find clips that offend people shows that drag is really not what they say it is, and it's a giveaway.
It's a giveaway. I don't disagree. You also have a Tory Harris, who is in the state legislature. He's a Democrat from the Memphis area. He's openly gay, and I believe he's the only one in your state legislature that is. He put out a TikTok trying to get to the heart of him fighting these bills, because obviously the Democrats are fighting a supermajority, and that's really difficult to do. Let's play this clip.
It's exhausting now. We're drained. We know that we have to keep on fighting regardless. You notice they did it so quickly to see if they can do it without it bringing so much attention to them. It's not like this is the first time they've tried to attack the LGBT community, and we know it's not the last time. We just got to be able to put that pressure on them. Every single one of them. As the only out member in the legislature now, I need more of my colleagues to also get behind that and push it. But I'm really happy to see people come up here and actually represent from the community, people who this will directly affect, people who this won't directly affect actually speaking up. So I'm proud to see that. We have a lot of senators and representatives just don't understand it because they've never seen it. They don't know what they're voting on. They're just voting because they're party lines. We've got to stop that at some point.
There was one other out member, Eddie Manis. He served one term and left. What did you think hearing that Eddie Manis felt bullied by his own colleagues?
Yeah, he was one of the few people I was able to talk to about a lot of things, and definitely felt bullied. And so I was very happy to see him actually come out and tell that story and be very transparent about what all was happening to him, because he had to kind of hide a lot of that. He got reprimanded for speaking out on issues. Sometimes I used to tell him, I used to be like, well, just tell me what you want to say and I'll say it, so that way at least we can kind of protect you in some way. But he was very vocal on his on the issues that mattered to him, and I hate to see that he's not here with me trying to make sure that other legislation doesn't pass.
At least we have a couple of guys out there that are trying to hold these things into account. What's the story with Tory?
Yeah, so Tory's in his second term out of Memphis. He's the only gay legislator left. That's because Eddie Manis, who was a Republican, served one term and retired. And on his way out, he said he felt bullied by Speaker Sexton and his own Republican caucus. So, you know, Tory is now the only one left. He's not the only one fighting this stuff. You know, a lot of the Democrats have stood up to this, not as vocally in some cases as one would hope. But, you know, Tory is in there. He is standing his ground, and you know we just need more people to speak up. We're having they're having a rally tomorrow at 3 p.m. at the Capitol that I hope people will show up for. We need more of a presence, more voices in the halls, making these guys uncomfortable for doing what they're doing. You know, otherwise it just normalizes, and you know that's what I would stress to everybody. It's you're either fighting this stuff or you're normalizing it. There's no third option.
At this point, it's become that extreme, yeah. So obviously, if he's been elected to the second term, there are voters in his district that absolutely support him. Are they becoming more vocal and involved and distressed by what they're seeing in the legislature as it becomes more extreme?
I wish I could say yes. You know, some people are, but really there's not enough of a pushback. You know, obviously, the way Tennessee is set up, you know, Memphis is kind of a blue pocket. Nashville is a blue pocket, but then the rest of the state is cherry red. So this is a super minority. You know, there's not that many people that can push back. We have a couple of new freshman legislators, Justin Jones and Justin Pearson from Nashville and Memphis, respectively, that have started to make some noise and come in here kind of guns blazing. Justin Pearson wore a dashiki on the floor a couple of days ago and got reprimanded by Republicans for it, even though there's no rules against it. Justin Jones read the 1619 Project behind Governor Lee at his inauguration to make a point. So, you know, I think more and more people are starting to realize that, you know, if you can't get bills passed and you can't stop bills, you have to at least make some noise and control the narrative a little bit. And so young legislators like Tory, Justin, and Justin are really starting to do that. I should mention Gloria Johnson. We saw, you know, John Ray, Caleb, and Bo. So, you know, they're making noise. I wish more of them would do it more often, but, you know, they are doing it, and they need to be supported by their constituents.
So how big is the presence there of Proud Boys and whatnot? Do they have a decent size that show up at these protests?
The Proud Boys, you know, when I've seen them show up, it's been probably like 15, 20 of them.
Okay.
You know, they're not like hanging out here at the Capitol. They were outside the Capitol for that, anti-trans rally, and then they showed up in Cookeville for an anti-drag rally and stood next to some Nazis.
Yeah, I saw that.
But those are, at the end of the day, the people that these legislators are pandering to, So I don't see a whole lot of daylight between the Proud Boys and this Republican supermajority.
I don't either at this point. That's why I'm asking. I want to put on the screen from Dirt. I'm going to say his name wrong. Melchizedek from Hicks Brewery.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay. All right. So, he has been a target of Proud Boys and other neo-Nazi groups showing up to his place because he has drag shows there. These are some of the things that he's saying. What's up, Hicks family? So my life has been hell lately. In the past 5 months, I've lost most of my employees, been harassed weekly by morons calling me a pedophile, dealt with Nazi protesters, and now we're also being evicted. Yeah, that's right. Don't ask me why. I don't know. I've almost never felt like giving up more. I've been through worse, so I say fuck them. If you all want to keep Hicks, we're going to need a lot of help. So is anyone willing to fight, or do you want me to just give the fuck up? So this is a guy that's at the end of his rope here, right? But in response, there was an outpouring from the community that want Hicks to stay in business. His response was, holy shit, y'all, I'm in tears from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. So I mean, yeah, this guy had literal Nazis show up at his drag show.
Yeah. It was an 18 and over drag show, first of all. I think that's important to note. This wasn't even about kids. And he's being threatened with eviction. There was actually a GoFundMe link that we helped post yesterday that, if your audience is interested, we can share. Also, he's trying to raise some money to move locations. But this is what people are dealing with, especially in the rural parts of our state, like Cookeville. It's the reason that we have 10 Hollers throughout the state, but I'm the only one that's not anonymous because it's not really safe in these places to be saying these things and standing up to these people, and they are using violence, stochastic terrorism, and the power of the state to pressure people who are just trying to live their lives freely. So that's what we're seeing more and more, and I feel bad for him, but people need to stand up and support when people like that are attacked.
I agree. So, here's the other thing to keep in mind. A lot of folks still can't wrap their heads around the fact that Christian nationalists and neo-Nazis are perfectly fine with each other. A lot of folks that aren't, in extreme religious environments think that, they're Jesus Christ Christians, then they're open and they accept everybody and, la. But this is not the case. Most neo-Nazis are Christian, and if they're not, the ones that aren't are paganists generally. But there is a deep tie between from Christian nationalism and neo-Nazis. This is irrefutably true. They have Telegram rooms called, Christian Arianism and all these sorts of things. So why do you think that's tolerated? It seems to be more tolerated among the evangelicals than any other group. Is it just by virtue of them having extreme religious viewpoints that they ignore this? I mean, we had Patriot Front showing up at the March for Life rally.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the great battles of our state and our country is really trying to help Christians who are not like that take their religion back from the people who are. I know a lot of Christians who don't believe that stuff and who actually do, believe in the message of the Bible, the real message of the Bible, which is take care of the poor, take care of the stranger, take care of your neighbor. Right. And, I don't want to paint all of Christianity with the light, with the brush that these guys are painting it with, but it does require Christians of good conscience to stand up to them, like Reverend Barber has been doing quite a bit.
I love Reverend Barber. He's fantastic.
Yeah, Pastor Riggs here in Tennessee, who talked a lot about that was Pete Buttigieg. So, I think it's important to try to have the conversation with people of faith in a way that kind of separates that Christian nationalism, the Proud Boys, the Nazis, from, the people who actually do want to practice in good faith, and have a discussion about what Christianity really says about these things, what it really stands for, and what the message of the Bible really is. And it's not about attacking people for who they are. It's about loving your neighbor.
It's supposed to be about inclusivity. That's right. So many times I listen to these folks and I'm like, have you actually read the Bible?
They have not. They have not.
But it's a thing, and it seems to be increasing. And I think you're correct. I think Christians that don't feel that way need to start speaking out against this stuff and doing something about it, because
Well, and in that way, you know, I mean, we're not a partisan organization. It just so happens we tend to agree with Democrats on a lot of things.
Right.
But, you know,
Right.
what I would say to Democrats is don't be afraid to have that conversation
Right.
and meet people where they are. We're still 75% Christian nation. Tennessee especially is a Christian. Like, Democrats need to be willing to have the conversation with people of faith and not say, no, we don't talk about that, because then they get painted as the anti-God party. So,
That's right.
you know, I think it's important to really drill down and have that conversation and not be afraid of it.
That's right. I think you're right. Christian nationalism and Christianity are not necessarily the same things.
Right.
But right now the conversation is being hijacked by the Christian nationalists, and I just don't see a lot of pushback coming from the rest of the evangelical community. It seems to me that as long as they get to overturn Roe v. Wade and some other things that they are opposed to, they're going to turn a blind eye to some of these other things, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous. So I'd like to see that change. On that note, what other things are you guys reporting on that you think are important that we haven't discussed yet?
Well, we touched on a lot of them. You know, we have the worst abortion ban in the country. We have the worst slate of hate in the country. We're extremely poor. We're sick. We have violent crime. And, you know, we have a Tennessee Republican supermajority that won't tell that story. They run around acting like everything's great. They brag about how fiscally responsible we are while we get 40% of our state budget from the federal government. You know, we're being ruled by theocratic hypocrites. And, you know, that's really the message that I want to get across to the rest of the country is what happens here is coming your way next. You know, help us fight here. Help Tennessee stand up for itself. You know, that's the quickest way to help turn around what's going on in a lot of parts of the South.
I don't disagree. In fact, let me ask you this on that note. How much money is coming in from far-right billionaires, i.e. Koch brothers? You mentioned Hillsdale College. I'm just wondering how much of this is being driven by that group. Maybe the CMP or something.
I mean, you know, with dark money the way it is, it's hard to know, but absolutely that's what's going on. You know, Daily Wire, you know, Americans for Prosperity is very big here. You know, you've got a lot of, you know, right-wing billionaires that play in Tennessee. And this is where Marsha Blackburn is. She's completely funded by billionaires. She gets like, I think 1% of her campaign funds from small dollar donations every time. You know, they are bought and paid for. And I'm not sitting here saying Democrats are perfect, but Republicans are a wholly owned subsidiary of right-wing billionaires. And, you know, people need to make that distinction. So, yeah, I think there's no better investment for a billionaire than a Republican politician. You know, they get what they pay for. The return is great. And that's why regular people need to stand up and push back.
Yeah, they get what they pay for, and meanwhile, they're going to engage in the culture wars, so to speak, because it distracts from the extraction of wealth that they're engaging in. As long as everybody's out there like fighting these culture wars, they're ignoring. Yeah, I don't
the
disagree.
other thing that it does, the other thing that the culture wars do is they make it impossible for people who actually do care about corruption and special interests on either side of the aisle to come together. You know, like, I think there are probably a lot of Republicans who are sickened by special interests and, you know, corporate overreach. But, you know, they are so angry about this mythical, you know, villain that is trans children and, you know, these migrant families and, you know, all these people that actually aren't impacting their lives, that they can't come together with the people on the left who care about corruption also, and that's by design. So these wedge issues drive a wedge between people who care about corruption, and you know, that's really something that needs to be overcome if we're ever going to do anything about it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. If there isn't an enemy, they're going to gin up an enemy because they need an enemy. I think that's sort of why they drift from one extreme point of view to the next extreme. You know, but where does it end? The extreme points of views are becoming so incredibly extreme and insane that what we end up with is like The Handmaid's Tale or something. I feel like that's kind of the trajectory, as not being hyperbolic, but I just think that's the trajectory that we're on at this point.
It's not just the trajectory that we're on. We're living it here in Tennessee.
We're living it. Yeah, you are. You definitely are. Justin, if people want to follow your work, where's the best place for them to do that?
So, tnholler.com is our website, but our website's kind of the last thing that we do, mainly on social media. So at the TN Holler on Twitter, at the TN Holler on Facebook, we're on Instagram and trying to build up on TikTok now too. So follow us at your various social medias. And then also we have a email list that goes out twice a week that you can subscribe at tnholler.com. We just put kind of all the links and videos that we've posted in the past few days to keep everybody up to speed. So follow us, we have Memphis Holler, Knoxville Holler. We have all kinds of, various hollers hollering about local issues throughout Tennessee. And, it's just our way of shining a light on the darkness that we're dealing with.
No, it's great. You guys are doing a fantastic job. You're one of my favorite Twitter feeds. Folks, support local journalism. This is the stuff you're never going to see CNN or, MSNBC or any of these larger outlets cover. We have lost so much local journalism in the country. So I'm just ecstatic that you're out there doing this stuff. Your work is impeccable. So I wanted to have you on to talk about some of these local stories. Thanks so much, Justin, for joining us.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I value what you guys do, the videos that you post also, so appreciate it very much.